Atlanta, a winter afternoon in December. Peachtree Mall shimmered with Christmas lights. A towering Christmas tree stood in the central plaza, glittering with glass ornaments and golden tinsel swaying in the cold breeze. The sound of jingle bells rang cheerfully from the loudspeakers, blending with the chatter and laughter of the crowd. Maya Thompson, 29, held tightly to the hands of her triplet sons, Evan, Elias, and Ezra, as they weaved through the bustling crowd. The 4-year-olds wore matching red sweaters, their pom-pom beanies bouncing with every hop, drawing attention from everyone around. "Mommy, I want to see Santa." Evan, the eldest, tugged at her hand, his big brown eyes sparkling with excitement. Always the leader of the trio, he had a bold personality and a non-stop chatter, proudly calling himself the captain of the team. "All right, but no running off, Evan." Maya smiled, her voice gentle but laced with exhaustion. A preschool teacher and a single mother, she was used to managing on her own. But 3 energetic boys were still a handful, especially in a place this crowded. Elias, the curious one with a mop of curly hair, pointed toward the distant ice cream counter. "Mom, can we get chocolate ice cream? I saw one with marshmallows too." He was always full of questions, from why snow falls to the most difficult one. "Where did Daddy go?" A question Maya never knew how to fully answer. "Let Mommy get the Santa tickets first, Elias," Maya replied, digging through her wallet for loose change. She glanced at Ezra, the shy youngest, who clutched a green toy car and clung tightly to her leg. "Ezra, sweetie, do you want ice cream?" Ezra shook his head, lips pressed together, eyes fixed on his glittery shoes. Maya gently patted his head, a pang tugging at her heart. Ezra was more sensitive than his brothers, and in crowded places he clung to her like he was afraid to be lost. She led her boys toward the Santa display area, where a wooden fence decorated with LED lights and pine garlands encircled the space. She double-checked the tickets in her hand, trying to stay composed amid the squeals and laughter of excited children. This was a rare outing for them during Christmas, and she wanted it to be perfect. A day without worries, without questions about the father they'd never met. Suddenly, Evan stopped in his tracks, nearly causing Maya to stumble. He froze, eyes wide, pointing at a tall man stepping out of a jewelry store just a few feet away. He wore a long black coat, dark brown hair falling over his forehead, and his chiseled face carried a cold but striking expression. He was on the phone, brows slightly furrowed, seemingly oblivious to the festive chaos around him. "Daddy!" Evan exclaimed, his clear voice echoing over the Christmas music. "Daddy!" Elias and Ezra chimed in, letting go of Maya's hand and darting toward the man. Maya froze, heart pounding. She turned, and time stopped. Standing there in the crowd was Liam Carter, her ex-husband, the man she hadn't seen in 4 years. His face looked just as sharp as she remembered. Those deep blue eyes that once made her fall hard now clouded with something distant and unreadable. Time hadn't changed him much, only made him seem colder, more unreachable. The boys threw themselves at him, hugging his legs. Evan looked up, a radiant grin on his face. "Daddy, Daddy, I knew it was you!" Elias giggled, trying to climb onto his knee, while Ezra, though hesitant, wrapped his little arms around Liam's pant leg, dropping his toy car on the ground. Liam bent down, stunned. He ended his call, slipped the phone into his coat pocket, and stared at the 3 small faces in front of him. They looked identical and eerily like him. The wide brown eyes, the little noses, the bright smiles. It was as if he were looking at copies of his childhood self. He instinctively stepped back, but the boys held on, chirping "Daddy" over and over. "They've got the wrong person," Liam murmured hoarsely, until his eyes found Maya's, and all his words caught in his throat. "Maya?" She stood frozen, gripping the strap of her bag so tightly her knuckles turned white. She wanted to run, to scream, but her feet were cemented in place. 4 years of pain, of raising 3 children alone, now rushed back in one crashing moment. And the man who broke her heart stood before her, being called Daddy by her sons. "Boys, come back to Mommy," Maya said, her voice trembling but trying to sound firm. She stepped forward, knelt, pulled Ezra into her arms and picked up his toy car. "Evan, Elias, come here now." "But he's Daddy," Evan protested, still clutching Liam's coat sleeve. "I saw his picture in Mommy's box." Right, Elias? Yes, yes. Elias nodded eagerly, eyes gleaming. Ezra said nothing, staying close to Maya, but he kept sneaking glances at Liam. That's not Daddy, Maya cut in, her voice sharper now, though her heart ached. She couldn't look Liam in the eyes, not with the weight of what stood between them. The sight of him surrounded by the three boys felt like a stolen dream, one she no longer had the right to claim. Liam stood tall again, but his eyes never left Maya. Maya, what's going on? His voice was deep, confused, tinged with anger. These kids, who are they? Maya shielded her sons behind her. They're my children, she said coldly, though her eyes shimmered as if tears were threatening to fall. They mistook you for someone else. I'm sorry for the trouble. She turned away, grabbing the boy's hands and walking quickly toward the Santa area. Evan kept glancing back, mumbling, "But he looked like Daddy." Elias tugged at her hand, while Ezra clutched his toy car and walked silently. Maya could feel Liam's gaze burning into her back, like a slow flame rekindling the wounds she had buried deep. Liam stood there, surrounded by glittering lights and Christmas cheer, feeling like he had been swept into a storm. The faces of those three boys, Evan, Elias, Ezra, were etched into his mind. And Maya? She was still as beautiful as ever, but her eyes held a sorrow he couldn't comprehend. He clenched his fists, a storm brewing inside him. If the children weren't mistaken, what had he missed these past 4 years? Welcome to Soul Stories, your home for heart-touching tales of love, hope, and second chances. If you believe in the power of kindness and the magic of unexpected connections, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join our growing family. Now let's begin today's story. Maya sat in the small kitchen of her Atlanta apartment, the dim yellow light casting soft shadows across her face. Her three sons, Evan, Elias, and Ezra, were fast asleep in the next room, their gentle breathing audible through the slightly ajar door. On the table sat a cold cup of tea, and in her hands was an old worn photograph. It was their wedding photo, taken beneath the oak trees at Piedmont Park. She wore a simple white dress, and Liam, in a gray suit, stood behind her, smiling brightly with his arms wrapped tightly around her. On the back, in blue ink, were the handwritten words, "Our Forever." But that forever had shattered, and today's encounter at Peachtree Mall had unearthed memories Maya had spent 5 years trying to bury. Liam's face, the look in his eyes as he gazed at the boys, the husky way he had said her name. It was like a blade reopening a wound that had never truly healed. She gripped the photo tighter, fighting back the tears, but her mind drifted to the past, to the days when love had once been everything. 7 years earlier, Maya had met Liam at a coffee shop in Midtown Atlanta. She was a student studying early childhood education, always carrying a notebook filled with messy doodles. He was a young entrepreneur, building his own tech company, cold on the outside but with eyes that warmed every time they looked at her. They literally ran into each other. She had spilled her coffee on his crisp white shirt. Flustered, she apologized repeatedly, but he just smiled and said, "If you buy me another one, I'll forgive you." From that moment, they became inseparable. Liam fell in love with Maya's gentleness and passion, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about the children at the preschool. Maya loved Liam's determination, the way he always found ways to make her laugh, whether it was a goofy text in the middle of a workday or a surprise evening under the stars. After 2 years of dating, they married in a small ceremony with only close family and friends. Maya believed it was the beginning of a fairy tale. But fairy tales don't last. 2 years into the marriage, when Maya discovered she was pregnant, the cracks began to show. Liam, overwhelmed by mounting pressure at work during a tough economy, grew distant. He worked late, barely spoke to her, and their dinners together became rare. Maya tried to be patient, thinking it was just a phase. He left for a business trip, and she looked forward to the day he came back so she could tell him about the surprise. They weren't having one baby, but three. The doctor had confirmed she was pregnant with triplets, something rare and deeply meaningful to her. But everything crumbled the night he returned. Liam came home with a dark expression and threw a folder onto the table. Inside were photographs of Maya embracing another man, Daniel, Liam's best friend, at a cafe. There were also text messages, sent from Maya's number, full of intimate words as if she were cheating. "I love you, Daniel. Liam doesn't understand me the way you do." Maya froze, shaking her head in disbelief. She tried to explain that she had never sent those messages, that she had only met Daniel to plan a surprise gift for Liam. "Liam, you have to believe me," she sobbed, grabbing his hand. "I didn't do anything wrong. Someone set this up, I swear." But Liam, pride wounded and heart shattered, refused to listen. "I've seen enough, Maya," he said, his voice ice cold. "I can't live with someone I no longer trust." He turned and walked out, leaving Maya collapsed on the floor, holding her belly, where 3 small lives were growing. In the days that followed, Maya tried to reach out. She sent dozens of texts, made countless calls, until Liam blocked her number. She contacted Daniel, who was just as shocked and swore he had nothing to do with it. But Liam refused to see either of them. A month later, Maya received divorce papers from a lawyer, along with a short note. "Let's set each other free." No explanation, no chance to fix things. Maya was crushed, but she knew she couldn't fall apart. She was carrying 3 children, and they needed her to be strong. Heartbroken and disillusioned, she made the decision to keep the pregnancy a secret. If Liam didn't trust her, if he was willing to throw away their love over a few manipulated photos, then he didn't deserve to know about the children. She left Atlanta for a while, moved in with her mother in Savannah, gave birth to Evan, Elias, and Ezra, and started over. For the past 5 years, she had been their everything, their mother, their father, their protector. She taught them how to tie their shoes, how to share their toys, and how to smile even when life was hard. Back in the present, Maya wiped her tears and tucked the wedding photo into a drawer. She didn't want the boys to see her cry, especially Ezra, who was so sensitive he always sensed when she was sad. But the moment at the mall haunted her. Evan, with the confidence of an older brother, had called Liam Daddy without hesitation. Elias, ever curious, had brought up the photo from her keepsake box, and Ezra, though quiet, had looked at Liam like he was searching for something. They had never met him before, yet something, instinct or fate, had drawn them to him. She stood and stepped out onto the small balcony, inhaling the sharp winter air of Atlanta. Somewhere out there, Liam was thinking about her. She was sure of it. But what was he thinking? Was he angry for being kept in the dark? Confused by how much the boys resembled him? Or was he just a stranger, swept into a strange moment he'd soon forget? At that very moment, in a luxury penthouse in downtown Atlanta, Liam sat on the couch, a glass of whiskey in hand. In front of him was a tablet, playing footage from Peachtree Mall's security cameras. He had asked his assistant to retrieve the video right after he left the mall. On the screen, the 3 little boys, Evan, Elias, and Ezra, ran toward him, arms wide, shouting, "Daddy!" with pure joy. He zoomed in, studying each tiny face. The brown eyes, the small noses, the radiant smiles. They looked so much like him it made his skin crawl. "Maya," he murmured, his voice thick with questions. She had said they were her children, but the look in her eyes, the way she had pulled them away from him, it was like she was hiding something. If they weren't his, why would they call him Daddy? And if they were, what had he missed over the last 5 years? Liam set the glass down, grabbed his phone, and called his assistant. "Find out everything about Maya Thompson, where she lives, what she does, and those kids. I want to know everything." He stared out the window, the city lights reflected in his eyes. A strange feeling stirred in his gut. This encounter at the mall wasn't a coincidence, and the truth, no matter how painful, was waiting to be uncovered. Liam Carter sat in his sleek top-floor office in downtown Atlanta, the city lights shimmering beyond the wide glass windows. It was nearly midnight, but he couldn't take his eyes off the tablet screen. The security footage from Peachtree Mall played on repeat, drawing him in like a whirlpool. The 3 boys, Evan, Elias, and Ezra, ran toward him, wrapping around his legs, their voices chiming in unison. "Daddy!" Their radiant smiles, big brown eyes, even the way Elias tilted his head when he spoke. It all looked so much like him. It made his chest tighten. 2 days had passed since that unexpected moment at the mall, but the images wouldn't leave his mind. He tried to return to his routine, million-dollar meetings, executive calls, but every time he closed his eyes, he saw Maya. The pain in her eyes, the guarded way she'd pulled the boys away from him. "They're my children," she'd said coldly, but the way she clutched their hands like she was afraid he'd take them from her kept echoing in his mind. Why did they call me Daddy? Liam set the tablet down and rubbed his temples. He wasn't the kind of man who let emotions dictate his actions, but this time, something was different. There was something in the boys' eyes, the way they looked at him. It stirred a strange connection in him. Like a part of himself stood before him, but just out of reach. And Maya, she wasn't the same woman he once knew. No longer the gentle, wide-eyed girl who once made his heart skip. She was stronger now, hardened, and carrying a scar he knew. Deep down, he had helped create. He picked up his phone and opened the email from his assistant, Rachel. The night after the mall encounter, he had instructed her to find everything she could about Maya Thompson. The preliminary report had just arrived. Liam opened the file, a mix of anticipation and anxiety swirling in his gut. It was short but thorough. Maya was now a preschool teacher at a public school on the outskirts of Atlanta. She lived in a modest apartment and was raising her 3 sons, Evan, Elias, and Ezra, on her own. All 4 years old. No information about the father, no husband, no boyfriend, no close relatives except her mother and Savannah. Maya had lived quietly, almost invisibly, for the past 5 years. Liam paused, his breath catching. Raising triplets alone. He tried to picture it. Maya, the girl who once lit up when he brought her wildflowers, now juggling 3 boys, sleepless nights, long work days, and endless questions from children about a father they'd never met. He flipped through the report again, looking for any hint about the children's father, but there was nothing. Just one line. The children were born a few months after Maya left Atlanta. No father is listed on the birth certificates. He stood and walked to the window, watching the stream of headlights below. A painful thought began to form. If the boys were 4 and Maya had been pregnant before their divorce, then maybe... He shook his head, trying to push the thought away, but it clung to him. Their faces, their smiles, they didn't just resemble him. They looked exactly like his childhood photos, the ones his mother still kept in her old family albums. "She should have told me," he muttered, voice tight with both anger and anguish. If Evan, Elias, and Ezra were his sons, why had Maya kept them from him? Why had she let him live 5 years unaware he was a father? But then a different memory surged. The night he'd thrown those photos onto the table, accused her of cheating, and walked out without giving her a chance to explain. He hadn't trusted her. He hadn't listened. Now he wondered if he even deserved to know the truth. Liam returned to his desk and searched for Maya's name online. Her social media was locked, but he found a public post from the preschool where she worked. It was a photo from a Christmas performance. Maya stood among the children, her smile gentle but her eyes distant. Beside her were 3 little boys dressed as tiny Santas, grinning widely. Liam zoomed in, his heart thudded in his chest. There was no doubt now. Evan, Elias, and Ezra bore his face, as if carved from the same mold. The fury inside him surged, but not just at Maya. He was angry at himself. Angry for the years he'd lost, for the pride that made him push her away, for the wounds he'd left behind. He wanted to face her, to ask her why, to demand the truth. But deep down he feared the answer, that he had destroyed something irreplaceable. He texted Rachel, "Get me Maya's address. I need to see her." But the moment he hit send, he hesitated. If he showed up, would she even let him in? Or would she push him away again, like she did at the mall? He remembered her eyes, that mix of sorrow and resolve, and knew the wall she'd built wouldn't come down easily. Meanwhile, in her small apartment, Maya was tucking Ezra into bed. The youngest clutched his toy car tightly, eyes still wide open despite yawning over and over. "Mommy, that man at the mall, was he Daddy?" Ezra whispered, his tiny voice enough to make Maya pause. She forced a smile, brushing his curls gently. "No, sweetheart. He just looked like someone Mommy used to know." But her voice trembled, and she knew Ezra could tell. He was the most sensitive of the 3. He always knew when she was hiding something. Evan and Elias were already fast asleep in the next bed, but Maya knew they were just as curious. Evan had boldly declared that the man was Daddy. Elias had asked about the wedding photo in her memory box. She had tried to keep everything under control, but that unexpected meeting with Liam had unraveled it all. She turned off the light and stepped into the living room, sinking onto the couch. The wedding photo still sat in the drawer, but she couldn't bring herself to look at it again. For 5 years, she had built a life for her and her boys, a life without Liam. But now he had returned, and she wasn't sure if she had the strength to face him, or the emotions she had tried so hard to bury. Back in his penthouse, Liam stared at his phone. His finger hovered over the contact of an old friend. Daniel, the man he'd once accused of betraying him. He wanted to call, to dig up the truth, but he stopped himself. Instead, he typed one more message to Rachel. See if you can access medical records for the boys. I need to know everything. He stood again, looking out over the city. A quiet determination lit his features. If Evan, Elias, and Ezra were his sons, he wouldn't let them grow up without their father. But first, he needed the truth. And no matter the cost, he would find it. Late afternoon in the suburbs of Atlanta, the golden hues of sunset bathed the quiet street in warmth. Maya's modest 2-story house nestled between tall oak trees, the front yard scattered with plastic toys and a small swing. The laughter of 3 boys, Evan, Elias, and Ezra, rang out from the corner of the yard, where they were building a fort out of wooden planks and cardboard boxes. Maya stood on the porch, holding a glass of water, her gaze gentle but tinged with unease. Ever since the unexpected encounter at Peachtree Mall, she couldn't shake the feeling that a part of her past was clawing its way back. The rumble of an engine broke the quiet. A sleek black SUV pulled up at the curb, and Liam Carter stepped out. He wore a light blue shirt with the sleeves rolled up, a small toy store bag in one hand. His face remained as striking as ever, but there was an uncharacteristic hesitation in his eyes. He stood there for a moment, watching the boys play in the yard. Evan was barking orders, directing his brothers to arrange the planks according to his fort plan. Elias dug at the dirt with a plastic shovel, searching for treasure. Ezra sat quietly on the grass, piecing together a tiny Lego car. Liam felt his heart pound. Their faces, their gestures, it was all eerily familiar, awakening something both foreign and deeply known. He took a deep breath and stepped through the gate. Evan spotted him first. "Hey, it's the man from the mall!" he shouted, running over with a bright smile. Elias looked up, eyes wide with recognition, while Ezra clutched his Legos a little tighter, watching cautiously. Maya turned sharply, nearly dropping the glass in her hand. She set it down quickly and stepped off the porch, her expression a blend of shock and guarded resolve. "Liam," she said, her voice low but trembling, "what are you doing here?" Liam raised the paper bag slightly, his tone gentle but strained. "I brought a few things for the kids. Just some toys. That's all. No agenda." His eyes moved between the boys and Maya. "I just want to talk, Maya. 5 minutes." Evan peeked into the bag. "Toys? What kind?" Elias bounced excitedly. "I love trains." Ezra said nothing, but his curious eyes flicked toward Liam. Maya hesitated, her gaze lingering on the bag before returning to Liam. She knelt down in front of the boys with a soft smile. "Why don't you take the toys over to the yard, sweethearts? Mommy just needs a quick chat with the guest, okay?" Then she looked up at Liam, her eyes clear with warning. "Don't push it." Evan grabbed his brother's hands and pulled them toward their play area. The trio laid out a picnic blanket and eagerly dug through the bag, exclaiming over a toy train set, building blocks, and animal puzzles. Laughter and bickering soon followed as they argued over how to assemble the train tracks. Maya led Liam back to the porch, far enough so the kids wouldn't hear. She folded her arms, her voice cool but full of unspoken hurt. "Say it, Liam. What do you want?" Liam stood across from her, hands in his pockets, trying to steady his voice. "I can't stop thinking about the boys, Maya. Their faces. They look just like me. I did some checking. I know you've been raising them alone. If they're mine, why didn't you tell me?" Maya's jaw tightened. Her eyes flared with pain as she replied in a low, sharp tone, careful not to let the children hear. "They are my sons," she said firmly. "I've raised them, loved them, alone for the past 5 years. You don't get to just show up and start asking questions like you've been part of their lives. Liam looked away briefly, like he'd been slapped. He glanced at the boys again, now giggling over the train set, and his voice dropped to a pained whisper. Maya, I didn't know. If I had known you were pregnant, if I had known about them, things could have been different. I was wrong, I know that. But if they're my children, I want to be part of their lives. Maya let out a bitter laugh. Part of their lives? You left me, Liam. You believed some fake photos and phony messages over the woman you married. I begged you to listen. I begged, and you turned your back. For 5 years, I've done everything to give them a good life. And now you think you can just walk in with a few toys and claim to be their father? Liam was silent, his hands trembling slightly. He wanted to tell her how much he regretted it, how pride had blinded him. But Maya's words were too sharp, and she wasn't wrong. I'm not trying to take them from you, he said hoarsely. I just want the truth. If they're mine, I want to do what's right, even if it's late. Maya turned away, eyes glistening. She looked toward her sons, playing so freely, and her heart cracked. The truth is, I've done everything to protect them, she said, voice shaking. And I'll keep protecting them, even if that means protecting them from you. Don't come near us again, Liam. I won't let my boys get hurt. She walked inside, the door closing softly but with finality. Liam stood there, staring out toward the boys. Evan was guiding his brothers through the tracks. Elias was laughing after knocking a piece over, and Ezra was carefully placing Legos together, glancing toward Liam now and then. A deep ache burned in Liam's chest, not just from Maya's words, but from the distance between him and the children who might be his. He turned toward his car. A quiet resolve filled him. He wouldn't force Maya, but he couldn't walk away either. If Evan, Elias, and Ezra were his sons, he would prove himself worthy, not just to them, but to her. Inside, Maya sank onto the couch, burying her face in her hands, trying to muffle her sobs. From the yard came the sound of her son's laughter, and it broke her. Evan rushed in, holding up a train car. Mom, that man brought awesome toys. Is he coming back? Elias and Ezra followed, eyes gleaming. Maya forced a smile and pulled them into a hug. He was just visiting, sweetheart, she said gently. Go play some more. Mommy will start dinner. But as she held them close, she knew Liam wouldn't give up so easily. And deep down, she feared her heart, no matter how locked, might still be vulnerable to him. Early morning in the suburbs of Atlanta, the Little Sprouts preschool buzzed with children's laughter. The playground was a burst of color, slides, swings, and murals of jungle animals painted across the walls. Maya stood at the school gate, holding the hands of her 3 sons, Evan, Elias, and Ezra, giving them their morning reminders. Evan, no fighting over toys today, okay? Elias, remember to listen to your teacher. Ezra, if you need mommy, just tell your teacher, all right? She gently patted each of their heads, smiling tenderly, though her eyes betrayed lingering worry since her confrontation with Liam the evening before. Got it, Mommy, Evan replied confidently, slinging his superhero backpack over his shoulders. Elias, ever curious, tugged at her hand. Mom, do we have art class today? Ezra, quiet and shy, clutched the toy car Liam had given him and simply nodded. Maya kissed each of their foreheads, watching them run toward the playground, her heart heavy. She knew Liam wouldn't give up easily, and with each passing day, she feared he'd find a way to get closer to the boys. Not far away, Liam sat in his car, parked discreetly near the preschool. Dressed in a plain t-shirt and wearing a baseball cap to stay inconspicuous, he held a small box of cookies in his lap, a gift he planned to deliver to the boys' class as a reason to visit. After their last conversation, he decided not to confront Maya again. Not yet. Instead, he wanted to get close to the boys, to observe them, to search for the truth in a gentler way. But deep down, he knew he was walking a fine line, between the yearning to be a father and the fear of hurting Maya all over again. He entered the preschool and was warmly greeted by the director after introducing himself as a friend of Miss Thompson's, here to drop off a treat for the class. The cookies and his friendly demeanor granted him easy access to the playground, where the children were enjoying outdoor activity time. Immediately he spotted Evan, Elias, and Ezra among the crowd. Evan was leading a superhero game. Elias was scribbling on the chalkboard, and Ezra sat alone in a corner, carefully building a Lego tower. "One of the teachers said a special guest is here," a voice called, and the children swarmed around Liam, eyes wide at the sight of the cookie box. Evan was the first to rush over, beaming. "You brought the toys yesterday. You're the guy." Elias pointed at him, grinning. "You gave us the train set." Ezra looked up from his Legos, gaze shy but steady, as if trying to figure out who Liam really was. Liam smiled, kneeling to be at eye level with the kids. "That's right. Today I brought cookies for everyone. But you have to share, okay?" He opened the box and the children cheered, forming a line. Evan grabbed 2 cookies, one for himself and one for Ezra. Elias devoured his, crumbs covering his mouth, while Ezra nibbled carefully, eyes still flicking toward Liam. After the treats, Liam sat beside Ezra, watching him stack his Lego blocks. "That's a cool tower," Liam said softly. "What do you like building the most?" Ezra blushed and mumbled, "Cars and houses." Liam picked up a piece and helped him add another layer. Ezra slowly warmed up, showing Liam how to build a secret door. Evan and Elias soon joined, dragging Liam into their superhero game. Evan declared him the mystery hero, while Elias insisted he play the villain so they could chase him. Liam laughed, genuinely, freely, for the first time in years. He ran after the boys, pretending to fall when Evan tackled him, and their laughter filled the air. In that moment, he wasn't a cold CEO. He was just a man yearning to connect with the children who might be his. When playtime ended, the kids sat under a tree to rest. Elias, always curious, suddenly tugged on Liam's sleeve. "You look like the man in Mommy's picture," he said innocently. Liam froze, his heart skipped. "What picture, Elias?" "The one in Mommy's box," Elias said brightly. "She hides it, but I saw it. It's her in a white dress, and there's a guy who looks like you. He's smiling really big." Evan nodded quickly, jumping in. "I saw it too. Mommy says it's an old photo, but she looks at it when she's sad." Liam felt his blood rush. He looked at Elias, then Evan, and finally at Ezra, who had dropped his eyes to the ground as if afraid he'd said too much. A wedding photo. Maya still kept it, after all these years, despite everything she'd said. And the boys, they knew about it. They recognized him. From that photo, from their photo. "Thank you for telling me," Liam said, his voice thick, trying to stay composed. He ruffled Elias's hair, smiled at Evan, and handed Ezra another Lego piece. But inside, a storm was rising. If Maya still kept the wedding photo, if the boys recognized him from it, then there was no doubt left in his heart. Evan, Elias, and Ezra were his sons. At that same moment, Maya was across town at another preschool, preparing materials for her class. Her phone buzzed. A message from one of the teachers at Little Sprouts. "Mr. Liam came by today with cookies for the kids. They really liked him." Maya froze, her hand trembling. Liam had gone to the school. He had approached the boys, despite her warning. Anger boiled in her chest, but beneath it, a rising fear. Fear that her sons would begin to love him, and fear that she wouldn't be able to keep them from him forever. She rushed out of the school and drove straight to Little Sprouts. By the time she arrived, Liam was gone. But Evan, Elias, and Ezra ran up to her, bubbling over with stories of Mr. Liam and the yummy cookies. Ezra, usually the quiet one, tugged her sleeve and whispered, "He helped me build a Lego car, Mommy." Maya forced a smile, pulling them all into her arms. "He was just visiting, sweetheart," she said softly. "Go back and play for a little while, okay? Mommy's going to make dinner soon." But as she held them close, her thoughts churned. Liam was slipping into their lives, and she didn't know how much longer she could keep him out. Back at his penthouse, Liam sat on the sofa, holding the wedding photo. He looked at his and Maya's faces in the picture, then thought of Evan, Elias, and Ezra. A quiet determination rose within him. He wouldn't force Maya, but he would do everything he could to be a father to his sons, and maybe, just maybe, to make things right. Night fell over Atlanta, and the cold air swept through the windows of Maya's small apartment. In the living room, Evan and Elias sat on the rug playing with the toy train, set Liam had given them, their laughter ringing out between the clacks of plastic tracks. But Maya couldn't focus on their joy. She stood in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner, her heart heavy after receiving a message from the teacher about Liam visiting the preschool. He had found his way into her children's lives, despite her warning, and she didn't know how to stop him without hurting Evan, Elias, and Ezra. Suddenly, a small scream rang out from the bedroom. Maya dropped the knife and rushed in, her heart pounding. Ezra, her youngest, lay on the bed, his small body trembling, his face pale, sweat beading on his forehead. "Ezra! Baby!" Maya dropped to her knees, wrapping him in her arms, trying to stay calm. She touched his forehead. It was burning. Evan and Elias ran in behind her, their wide eyes filled with fear. "Mom, what's wrong with Ezra?" Evan asked, his voice shaking. "He'll be okay, sweetheart," Maya said, though her voice broke. She picked Ezra up and checked his temperature, 102.2 degrees Fahrenheit. He started breathing rapidly, eyes shut tight, his body still shaking. Maya knew this wasn't a normal fever. Her hands trembled so badly she nearly dropped her phone as she called for an ambulance. "Please, save my son," she whispered to the operator. At the hospital, the ER was stifling with tension. Maya sat beside Ezra's bed, holding his hand, her eyes locked on his small face. A middle-aged doctor with a calming voice entered after reviewing the test results. "Ms. Thompson, Ezra has a severe infection and signs of anemia. He needs an immediate blood transfusion, but his blood type is AB negative, very rare. Do you have this blood type?" Maya shook her head, tears brimming. "No, I'm O positive." She paused, her heart clenching as she thought of Liam. She remembered when they used to live together, how Liam's mother had once proudly mentioned over dinner that both she and Liam had AB negative blood, a rare trait. Maya wasn't sure if Ezra shared that type, but in this desperate moment, with Ezra lying limp in the bed, she had no other choice. Her hands shaking, she pulled out her phone and dialed Liam, the number he had left after visiting the school. "Liam," she said when he answered, her voice choked. "Ezra, he's at the hospital. He needs a transfusion, a B negative. I think you might have that type. Please come now." Less than 15 minutes later, Liam burst into the ER, his coat damp with rain. He looked at Ezra lying on the bed, an IV in his tiny arm, and felt as if something had gripped his chest tight. He turned to Maya, his eyes filled with concern. "How is he?" Maya didn't look at him, only held Ezra's hand tighter. "He needs blood. The doctor is checking." Her voice was steady, but Liam's presence unsettled her. She felt both grateful and terrified. The doctor returned, holding Liam's test results. "Mr. Carter, your blood type is AB negative, a perfect match. We can begin the transfusion right away. Are you ready?" Liam nodded without hesitation, shrugging off his coat. "Let's do it." In the transfusion room, Liam sat in a chair, his arm connected to a tube, his eyes never leaving Ezra through the glass. He thought about the shy little boy, the way Ezra carefully stacked Legos, the way he'd secretly glanced at him at preschool. If Ezra was his son, and the matching blood type only strengthened that suspicion, he would do anything to save him. The transfusion was successful. Ezra began to stabilize, color returning to his face. Maya sat beside him, tears silently falling as she stroked his hair. Evan and Elias, who had been watched by a nurse in the waiting room, rushed in and wrapped their arms around her. "Ezra's okay now, right, Mommy?" Elias asked, his eyes wide with hope. Maya nodded, offering a faint smile. "Yes, sweetheart. Thank you for being brave." Liam stood at the doorway, watching the scene unfold, his heart a mix of relief and pain. He stepped inside, his voice low. "He's okay?" Maya nodded, but still avoided his gaze. He couldn't hold it back any longer. "Maya, Ezra's blood type, and mine. You know what that means, don't you? Why didn't you tell me? If Ezra, Evan, and Elias are my children, why did you hide them from me for 5 years?" Maya stood, gesturing for the nurse to take Evan and Elias out of the room. Once they were alone, she turned to him, her eyes burning with a storm of hurt. "You want to know why?" Her voice was sharp but restrained. "Because when I needed you most, you chose to believe someone else. You threw fake photos in my face, called me a traitor, and walked away. I begged you, but you didn't listen. I had to protect my kids, Liam, and I couldn't trust that you'd stay if you knew. Liam lowered his head, his fists clenched. Her words cut deep. He wanted to say he was sorry, that he had been wrong, but he knew nothing could undo 5 years of her pain. I didn't know about the kids, he said hoarsely. If I had, Maya, I swear, I never would have left. Maya let out a bitter laugh, tears rolling down her cheeks. But you did leave, Liam, and I learned how to live without you. She turned back to Ezra, gently stroking his hand like a shield against the world. Thank you for saving him, but don't think this changes everything. Liam stood there in silence, looking at Maya and Ezra. He wanted to stay, to hold his son, to tell Evan and Elias he wouldn't disappear again. But Maya's eyes, both wounded and resolute, told him he wasn't ready yet. He nodded faintly and walked out of the room. But in his heart, a quiet determination stirred. He wouldn't pressure her, but he would prove he could be the father the boys needed. In the hospital room, Maya sat beside Ezra, listening to his steady breathing. Evan and Elias returned, carrying a crayon drawing of the three brothers and Mom. For Ezra to get better, Elias said, placing the drawing beside his pillow. Maya smiled and pulled them into a hug, her heart heavy with emotion. Liam had saved Ezra, and she knew he wouldn't stop there. No matter how hard she tried, Maya feared that neither her sons nor her own heart could run from him forever. Early morning in Atlanta. Soft sunlight streamed through the windows of Liam Carter's luxurious penthouse. He sat on the sofa, holding a cup of cold coffee. After the night at the hospital, after he donated blood to save Ezra, his heart felt like it had been torn open. A perfect blood type match, a B negative. The look in Evan, Elias, and Ezra's eyes. The innocent words from Elias about the wedding photo. Everything confirmed what he had long suspected. The boys were his sons. And yet Maya's words echoed, sharp and painful. You left, Liam, and I learned how to live without you. Liam couldn't sit still. If he wanted a chance to be a father, or even to be the man Maya had once loved, he needed the truth. The truth about what really happened 5 years ago, when he believed she had betrayed him. He picked up his phone and scrolled to Daniel's number, his former best friend, the man he once thought was Maya's lover. For 5 years, Liam had avoided Daniel, but now he needed answers. He arranged to meet him at a coffee shop in Midtown, the place where it had all begun. The cafe looked the same as ever, still filled with the scent of roasted beans and local artwork on the walls. Daniel, now a software engineer, walked in, his expression a mix of surprise and caution. Liam, he greeted, sitting across from him. It's been a long time. You doing okay? Liam didn't waste time. He placed a worn folder on the table, the same folder of photos he had received 5 years ago. Pictures of Maya embracing Daniel, accompanied by forged text messages. I need the truth, Daniel, Liam said, his voice low and steady, but tight with pressure. These photos, these messages, where did they come from? I know now Maya never sent them. So who did? Daniel paled, his hand tightening around his coffee cup. He lowered his gaze as if wrestling with guilt. Liam, I tried to tell you back then, but you wouldn't listen. There was nothing between me and Maya. She met with me to pick out a surprise for you. A watch, remember? She wanted to surprise you. Liam nodded slowly, eyes locked on Daniel. Then how did these photos come about? Who sent them to me? Daniel exhaled shakily. It was Victoria. She had feelings for you, Liam. She couldn't stand seeing you happy with Maya. She hired someone to take photos when Maya met me, then fake the text from her number. I found out after you and Maya divorced, but by then it was too late. Maya had left Atlanta, and you wouldn't listen to anyone. Liam felt his blood boil. Victoria, Maya's so-called friend, the woman who always smiled at their dinner parties, who seemed so supportive, had been the one to destroy their marriage. He clenched his fists, trying to stay calm. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Liam asked, voice hoarse. I tried, Daniel said, full of regret. But you blocked me. You blocked Maya. And Victoria, she threatened me. Said she'd ruin my career if I said anything. I was a coward, Liam. I'm sorry. Liam stood up without another word. He needed to see Victoria. He needed to hear her admit it, to her face. He found her number. She was now a prominent event planner in Atlanta. He called and demanded a meeting. That afternoon in a sleek Buckhead office, Victoria sat across from Liam. Her usual confident smile faded the moment she saw his cold expression. "Liam, it's been a while," she said, trying to sound warm, but there was a trace of worry in her voice. "What brings you here so suddenly?" Liam didn't bother with pleasantries. He set the folder and printed messages on the table. "Tell me the truth, Victoria. You faked the messages. You hired someone to take those pictures. You made me think Maya was cheating. Why?" Victoria's face went pale. Her hands trembled slightly. She tried to smile, but it was forced. "Liam, what are you saying? I didn't—" "Don't lie," he cut in, his voice low and sharp. "Daniel told me everything. I want to hear it from you. If you don't talk, I'll make sure all of Atlanta knows how you ruined someone's life." Victoria looked down. Tears welled in her eyes, but Liam wasn't sure if they were from guilt or performance. "Fine," she whispered. "I did it. I loved you, Liam. I couldn't bear to see you choose Maya. I thought, if she left, maybe you'd turn to me. But I was wrong. I never thought it would go that far." Liam felt like he couldn't breathe. 5 years of Maya's suffering. 5 years of his children growing up without a father. All because of Victoria's selfishness. He wanted to scream, to smash something. Instead, he stood, his voice like ice. "You destroyed my family, Victoria. Live with that." And he walked out, heavy with grief. That evening, Liam stood in front of Maya's house, holding the folder and a handwritten letter. His heart pounded as he knocked on the door. Maya opened it, guarded as always. From inside, the sounds of Evan, Elias, and Ezra playing with Legos drifted into the night. "I told you not to come," she said, her voice tight with restraint. "I know," Liam replied quietly, "but you deserve the truth." He handed her the folder and the letter. Victoria did it all. She faked the texts. She had those pictures taken. "I was wrong not to trust you, Maya. I'm sorry. I don't expect forgiveness tonight, but I needed you to know. I regret everything, and I want to make it right." Maya's hands trembled as she took the folder. She skimmed the letter, his words about what he had discovered, the pain of realizing what he'd missed, and a promise not to force her, but to always be there if she needed him. Tears welled in her eyes, but she wiped them quickly. "It's too late, Liam," she said, her voice breaking. "The kids grew up without you. I went through everything alone. An apology doesn't undo that." She stepped back, her gaze firm but full of sorrow. "Thank you for the truth," she said softly. "But I need time, and the boys. They need me more than anything right now." She closed the door gently, leaving Liam standing on the porch. Inside, Maya knelt beside her sons as they worked on building a fort from Legos. "Mommy, did Mr. Liam bring toys again?" Elias asked, his eyes wide with hope. Maya smiled faintly, brushing his hair. "No, sweetheart, he just stopped by." She pulled them all into a tight hug, her tears silent. The truth had finally come out, but it couldn't erase the scars of the past 5 years. Out on the porch, Liam stared at the closed door, his hand tightening around the wedding photo in his pocket. He knew he couldn't force Maya, but he also knew he couldn't walk away. Evan, Elias, and Ezra were his sons, and he would do everything he could to prove he deserved to be their father, and maybe one day to win back the woman he had lost. He walked back to his car, a quiet resolve rising within him. The truth was just the beginning. The road ahead would be longer than he ever imagined. On a weekend morning in suburban Atlanta, Little Sprouts Preschool hosted a picnic at a nearby park. Families gathered under sprawling oak trees, children's laughter blending with the scent of freshly cut grass. Maya stood by a picnic table, arranging cookies and juice, her eyes never leaving her 3 boys, Evan, Elias, and Ezra, who were chasing each other across the lawn. Since Liam came to the house with the truth about Victoria, Maya had tried to keep things normal for her sons. But inside, she was torn. She feared Liam's presence would upend the life she had carefully built over the past 5 years. Liam appeared at the park gate, holding a small gift bag, some balls and a set of coloring books he had thoughtfully chosen to avoid overwhelming anyone. He had gotten permission from the principal to attend as an event volunteer, a subtle way to stay close to the boys without confronting Maya directly. He knew she hadn't forgiven him, but after saving Ezra and learning the truth, he couldn't stay away from their lives any longer. Evan spotted Liam first and shouted, "Uncle Liam, what did you bring?" He ran over, dragging Elias and Ezra behind him. Elias, ever curious, pulled a ball from the bag, his eyes lighting up. "Let's play, Uncle." Ezra, the shyest, lingered behind his brothers, but his eyes lit up at the sight of the coloring books. Maya turned, her eyes hardening as she saw Liam. She walked over, her voice low but controlled. "You shouldn't be here, Liam. I told you I need time." Liam raised his hand in a gesture of peace. "I know, Maya. I just wanted the boys to have a good day. I promise I'll stay within my limits." She hesitated, glanced at her kids laughing with Liam, then gave a reluctant nod and returned to the picnic table. Liam spent the whole morning with the boys, participating in every game. He raced Evan in a sack race, pretending to lose so the boy could cheer his victory. With Elias, he played catch, patiently teaching him how to aim. Ezra was more reserved, but when Liam sat on the grass and opened a coloring book, drawing a train with him, the little boy slowly warmed up, even giggling when Liam purposely messed up his drawing. At lunchtime, Liam helped Maya hand out sandwiches, standing beside her but keeping a respectful distance. "They're amazing," he said softly, watching the three boys share potato chips on a picnic blanket. Maya didn't respond, but she noticed how Liam paid attention. The way he remembered Evan liked mustard, Elias hated tomatoes, and Ezra would only eat toasted bread. Her heart wavered for a moment, but she quickly buried the feeling, reminding herself of the scars left behind 5 years ago. That evening, Liam volunteered to tell the closing story to the group. Sitting in a circle of children, his deep, warm voice told the tale of a knight who saved an entire kingdom with courage. Evan, Elias, and Ezra sat close to him, their eyes shining. When the story ended, Evan suddenly hugged him and shouted, "You're Daddy, right?" Elias nodded eagerly, and Ezra, though silent, nestled into Liam's arm. From the corner of the room, Maya's heart clenched. She walked over, gently pulling the boys back. "It's time to go, boys," she said, her voice trembling. Liam looked at her, eyes full of hope and remorse. "Thank you for letting me be here today," he said. Maya only nodded and led the boys to the car. But the way Evan looked back at Liam made it impossible for her to shake the thought, they're beginning to love him. That night in their apartment, Maya sat beside the boys' bed, reading a bedtime story. Ezra, clutching a toy car, whispered, "Uncle Liam tells the best stories, Mom." Elias chimed in, "He looks just like the daddy in the photo." Maya forced a smile and kissed their foreheads. "Good night, my loves." But when she turned off the lights, she sat alone on the sofa, her hand brushing the wedding photo tucked away in the drawer. She didn't want to admit it, but Liam was trying, and her heart, though sealed shut for years, was beginning to stir. One weekend afternoon, Liam drove to the nursing home on the outskirts of Atlanta, where his mother Eleanor was spending her final years. He had told her about Evan, Elias, and Ezra, and she had insisted on meeting them. Liam hesitated, knowing Maya still wasn't ready, but he called her, his voice sincere. "Maya, my mom wants to meet the boys, just for one afternoon. I promise, I won't pressure you into anything." After a long pause, Maya agreed, her voice cold. "For the boys, Liam, only for them." At the nursing home, the air was warm and welcoming, filled with watercolor paintings and the smell of freshly baked cookies. Eleanor, her hair silver white but her eyes sharp, sat in a plush chair, eagerly waiting. When Maya arrived with the boys, Eleanor burst into tears, reaching out to hug them. "Oh, my grandchildren," she whispered, stroking Ezra's hair. "They look just like Liam when he was little." Evan asked curiously, "You're our grandma?" Elias added, "You know Daddy, right?" Ezra, shy as always, clung to Maya, but when Eleanor offered him a cookie, he smiled. Maya stood quietly watching the scene, overwhelmed by a mixture of emotion and unease. Eleanor took her hand, her voice trembling. "Thank you for raising them, and I'm sorry for what Liam did. He was wrong, but he's trying to make it right." Liam stood in the corner of the room watching his mother with the children, a warmth filling his chest he had never felt before. He helped the boys play with building blocks beside Eleanor, telling stories from his own childhood. how he once built forts like Evan, or doodled just like Elias. Maya observed silently, realizing that Liam wasn't just trying with the boys, he was trying with his family too. That evening they all had dinner in the garden behind the nursing home, lit by strings of glowing lanterns. Evan, Elias, and Ezra sat between Maya and Liam, laughing as Eleanor told tales of Liam ruining her cookies as a child. For the first time in 5 years, Maya felt a flicker of something familiar. Not for Liam, but for the small, imperfect family she once dreamed of. When Ezra accidentally called Liam Daddy while asking for more water, Maya didn't correct him. She only bowed her head to hide her tears. On the drive home, the boys slept peacefully in the back seat. Liam glanced at Maya. "Thank you for coming today," he said softly. "I know it wasn't easy for you." Maya looked out the window, her voice quiet. "I did it for the boys, but I see you're trying, Liam." She stopped as if afraid that saying more would reopen a door she'd long since closed. Back at the apartment, Maya lay beside the boys, listening to their soft breathing. The wedding photo remained in the drawer, but this time, it didn't hurt to think about it. Liam was changing, and though she wasn't ready to forgive him, she was beginning to believe that maybe, just maybe, they did deserve a second chance. She closed her eyes, a faint smile on her lips, feeling hope for the first time in 5 years. Are you still following the story? Please leave your thoughts on the story in the comments below. All your comments are the motivation for us to create better stories. Don't forget to subscribe to Soul Stories. Thank you very much. The spirit of Christmas filled Little Sprouts Preschool on the outskirts of Atlanta. The small auditorium sparkled with tinsel, twinkling lights, and a towering Christmas tree adorned with shimmering ornaments. Families gathered to watch the year-end performance, laughter and festive music echoing through the halls. Maya sat in the front row, her hands tightly clasped, eyes tender as she watched her 3 sons, Evan, Elias, and Ezra, rehearsing backstage. Ever since the visit to the nursing home, something had shifted inside her. Liam had proven that he wasn't just a father in name, he was truly trying for their sons. But fear still lingered, the fear of opening her heart only to be broken again. Liam stood quietly in a corner of the room, helping the teachers arrange props, his eyes never straying far from Maya and the boys. He had discreetly coordinated with the principal to support the event, bringing along a small bag of gifts, storybooks and colored pencils for the preschool class. He knew Maya was still hesitant, but he wanted the boys to have a Christmas to remember. Every small act, he hoped, might slowly rebuild the trust he had once shattered. He was patient, knowing that after 5 years of pain, healing would take time. The performance began. Evan, Elias, and Ezra stepped onto the stage in tiny angel costumes, golden paper halos atop their heads. They stood with their classmates and sang, "You Are My Sunshine," their sweet voices filling the auditorium and bringing tears to more than one parent's eyes. Evan led boldly, his voice loud and proud. Elias, slightly offbeat, grinned from ear to ear. Ezra, though shy, held his brother's hands and sang in a quiet, clear voice. Maya clapped with tears shimmering in her eyes, tears of pride and something deeper. After the performance, the boys rushed down to her, pulling Liam over with them. "Mr. Liam, did you hear us sing?" Evan beamed, adjusting his halo. "I sang the loudest, didn't I?" Elias chimed in. Ezra, ever timid, held out a crayon drawing to Liam. 4 stick figures holding hands under a Christmas tree. Liam knelt, his smile warm and gentle. "You all were amazing, and this drawing, I'm going to keep it forever." He ruffled Ezra's hair, feeling a rush of connection, something deep and real. Maya watched the scene, her heart stirring. Liam wasn't just playing with the kids. He knew them. He understood Evan's need to lead, Elias's endless curiosity, and Ezra's quiet need for gentle encouragement. When Liam handed her the bag of gifts for the class, he said softly, "Thank you for letting me be here, Maya. I just want the boys to be happy." She nodded quietly. "They love you," she murmured. I can see that." As the auditorium emptied out, Liam helped Maya clean up. Meanwhile, Evan, Elias, and Ezra ran around the Christmas tree, squealing as Liam playfully chased them, pretending to be a snow monster. Maya stood still, watching them, and for the first time in 5 years, she felt a flicker of hope. She wasn't ready to give her heart completely, but she no longer wanted to keep Liam out of their children's lives. That night, Maya sat with her sons reading Christmas stories. Ezra clutched the drawing he had given Liam and whispered, "He liked my picture, Mommy." Elias chimed in, "He's Daddy, isn't he? I saw you smile at him." Maya smiled faintly, kissing their foreheads. "Good night, my loves." After the lights were off, she sat on the couch, her hand resting on the wedding photo tucked in the drawer. She didn't want to admit it, but Liam was becoming a part of them again, and for the first time, she began to believe they might rebuild what was lost. 1 year later, a cozy cabin in suburban Atlanta glowed with warm lights. The front yard was blanketed in snow, where Evan, Elias, and Ezra giggled as they built snowmen, their sweaters speckled with frost. Maya stood on the porch wrapped in a scarf, smiling brightly at her boys. Beside her, Liam carried a tray of steaming cocoa, eyes soft with affection. In the years since Christmas, they had rebuilt their foundation, step by step, from bedtime stories and weekend park visits to messy baking sessions and quiet talks under the stars. Liam had become more than a father. He had become someone Maya slowly began to trust again. That day in the backyard, Liam had a surprise planned. He had set up a small Christmas tree, decorated with string lights and paper stars made by the boys. As the sun dipped low, he led Maya and the boys outside, where the glowing tree turned the snowy yard into a fairy tale. Evan, Elias, and Ezra squealed with delight, running circles around the tree. Then Liam knelt before Maya, holding a small box. "Maya," he said, his voice trembling, "5 years ago, I destroyed the most precious thing in my life by not believing in you. But thanks to Evan, Elias, and Ezra, I've learned that real love never truly leaves. I've spent the last year proving I'll never walk away again." He opened the box, revealing a gleaming wedding ring. "Will you give me the chance to stand by you and our sons forever?" Behind him, the boys held up a crayon banner that read, "Mommy, say yes." Evan shouted, "Daddy's a superhero." Elias grinned, "Say yes so we get cake." Ezra, shy as ever, took her hand and whispered, "I want Daddy to stay with Mommy." Tears spilled down Maya's cheeks. She remembered the years of pain, but also the moments when Liam had been patient, when he had saved Ezra, when he had sat for hours building Lego cities and listening to their stories. She took a deep breath, smiling. "Yes, Liam, I say yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger as the boys cheered and the lights sparkled all around them. A few months later, in their snowy backyard, Maya and Liam renewed their vows in a quiet ceremony. Just close family and a few friends. Maya wore a simple white dress, her eyes glowing with faith. Liam, in a gray suit, held her hand with reverent joy. Evan, Elias, and Ezra, tiny groomsmen in miniature tuxedos, ran around them, each carrying a paper star from the proposal tree. "We're the superhero squad," Evan declared. "Is the cake going to have frosting?" Elias asked eagerly. Ezra, quiet but glowing, hugged Liam's leg and whispered, "Daddy." Liam's mother, Eleanor, sat in the front row, tears shining. Maya's mother, visiting from Savannah, held her daughter's hand and whispered, "You deserve this happiness." When they exchanged vows, Maya said, "I once thought we had lost each other, but our children brought you back." Liam replied, "I promise to spend the rest of my life protecting this family." That night inside the cabin, Liam and Maya rocked gently on the porch swing, watching the boys play with a puppy, Liam's surprise gift. The home was filled with laughter, the scent of cookies, and a quiet, enduring warmth. Maya leaned against him and whispered, "Turns out we were never truly apart." Liam kissed her forehead, his arm around her, eyes on the framed wedding photo hanging on the wall. "No, we weren't," he said with a smile. "And from now on, we'll be together, always." Evan rushed over, tugging their hands. "Come build another snowman, Daddy, Mommy." Elias and Ezra giggled, following behind. Beneath a starlit sky, with snowflakes falling around them, Liam and Maya joined their sons, stepping into a future where love, rediscovered through 3 little boys, would never be lost again. Seattle, January 2025, arrived with its signature drizzles. The city sparkled with lights from towering skyscrapers, But beneath Sarah Monroe's umbrella, the world was reduced to three tiny hands clinging tightly to her. Damien, Daniel, and Daisy, her 3-year-old triplets, walked along the rain-slicked sidewalk, their wide eyes marveling at the floating digital billboards on the street. Sarah smiled, though her heart felt unbearably heavy. This was a new beginning, but also a massive gamble. After 6 years living in a small town in Oregon, working at a local craft store to support her children, Sarah had decided to return to the city. Seattle wasn't just the place where she had once dreamed of becoming a graphic designer. It was also where she had once loved, once hurt, and once left everything behind. But now she was no longer the naive 24-year-old girl from 2019. She was a mother, and her children were the only reason she kept moving forward. Sarah had applied for a design position at a tech startup called Spark Vibe, a small company advertised as a space for creative freedom. What she didn't know was that just weeks earlier, Spark Vibe had been acquired by Blackwell Industries, the tech giant led by Ethan Blackwell, the man she once loved. To Sarah, Ethan was nothing more than a painful memory, locked away in the drawer of the past. She didn't read the news, didn't follow updates about billionaires, and had no idea she was about to walk straight into fate. Today was interview day. Sarah had no choice but to bring her kids along. She couldn't find a sitter. She knelt down and gave them strict instructions. Stay in the waiting room. No wandering, okay? Damien, the most sensitive of the three, nodded seriously, his big brown eyes brimming with curiosity. Daniel, quiet and fascinated by machines, clutched his handmade robot model, and Daisy, the frail one with pale blonde hair, held her mother's hand tightly and coughed softly. "I'll be back soon," Sarah reassured her, brushing her daughter's hair. The Spark Vibe building sat in the heart of Seattle, a modern glass high-rise with touchscreens embedded throughout the lobby. Sarah seated her children in the waiting area, where soft couches surrounded a large screen displaying an ad for artificial intelligence. She gave Damien a firm look. "You're the oldest. Watch over Daniel and Daisy, okay?" He nodded, though his eyes had already drifted to the far end of the lobby, where a glass door slid open to reveal a brightly lit hallway filled with glowing tech. The interview went smoothly. The recruiter, a young woman named Mia, seemed genuinely impressed by Sarah's portfolio. "We need creative minds like yours," Mia said with a smile. Sarah felt a flicker of hope. Maybe she really could start over. But as she stepped out of the interview room, her heart nearly stopped. The waiting area was empty. Damien, Daniel, and Daisy were gone. "Kids?" Sarah called out, her voice trembling. She dashed across the lobby, scanning every corner, but only saw men in suits passing by, uninterested. She rushed to the front desk, nearly shouting, "My kids! 3 of them! Where are they?" The receptionist, a young woman, hesitantly checked the security footage. "I saw a little boy walk down the east corridor. Maybe he's yours?" Sarah didn't wait another second. She ran in that direction, sneakers pounding against the marble floor. The east corridor led to the executive office area, where glass doors bore the logo of Blackwell Industries. She didn't notice the name. She didn't connect the dots. All she cared about was finding her children. Meanwhile, Damien, his curiosity unstoppable, had led Daniel and Daisy toward a soft green light glowing behind a glass door. "Look, it's like in a sci-fi movie," he whispered, pointing at a large touchscreen display showing a 3D model of some futuristic device. Daniel, usually quiet, was captivated, and Daisy, though timid, held her brother's hand and followed. The glass doors slid open as they approached, revealing a large, luxurious office with an ebony desk and windows offering a sweeping view of Seattle. At the far end of the room sat Ethan Blackwell, brows furrowed as he read a report on his screen. 35 now, he looked just as sharp as he had 6 years ago, with a few more lines at the corners of his eyes. His tailored gray suit fit perfectly, his brown hair was neatly styled, and his piercing blue eyes, the very ones that once made Sarah's heart flutter, were now laser-focused on work. He didn't hear the soft footsteps behind him until a small robot model clattered to the floor. Ethan looked up, ready to speak, then froze. In front of him stood a 5-year-old boy with messy brown hair, bright blue eyes that mirrored his own childhood, and a sheepish smile. "Sorry, I just wanted to see that screen, Damien said, pointing at the device on the desk. Daniel stood behind him, clutching the robot, while Daisy clung to her brother, coughing quietly. Ethan blinked, feeling as though time itself had stopped. Damien's face, no, all three children's faces, held eerie familiarity. He stood, taking a cautious step forward, voice soft but wary. Who are you? Who brought you here? Before Damien could respond, the door burst open. Sarah rushed in, breathless, hair in disarray. Damien, Daniel, Daisy, I told you not to. She stopped mid-sentence. Her eyes locked onto Ethan. Time rewound. The man before her with those blue eyes and commanding presence was Ethan Blackwell, the man she had once loved, once thought would be her whole world, until he shattered her heart 6 years ago. Ethan was just as stunned. Sarah? His voice cracked, disbelief etched across his face. He had never expected to see her again, the woman who had vanished without a word, and now she stood before him with 3 children who looked unmistakably like him. Sarah quickly composed herself, though her heart pounded violently. She knelt, pulling her children close. I'm sorry for the disturbance, she said stiffly, avoiding Ethan's gaze. We're leaving now. She stood, took her children's hands and walked briskly toward the door. Wait, Ethan called out, but Sarah didn't look back. The glass door closed behind her, leaving him standing alone, reeling. Damien, Daniel, Daisy, the names echoed in his mind. And Sarah, the woman he had once loved, once lost. This couldn't be a coincidence. Ethan turned back to his desk and pressed a button on the phone. Lena, he said to his assistant, voice cold but firm, find everything you can on a woman named Sarah Monroe, immediately. Meanwhile, Sarah guided her children out of the building, holding them close beneath the Seattle rain. She had no idea that the door she had locked tightly 6 years ago had just been opened again. The rain in Seattle continued to fall, tracing blurred streams down the windows of Ethan Blackwell's office. He stood there, one hand braced against his ebony desk, eyes fixed on the glass door where Sarah and the 3 children had just disappeared. The boy, Damien, the name Sarah had called him, was etched into his mind. Those deep blue eyes, the tousled brown hair, and that shy smile mirrored a photo Ethan had once seen in his mother's old album, a picture of himself at age 5. Not just Damien. The other 2, Daniel and Daisy, also carried features disturbingly familiar, like miniature versions of himself. Ethan wasn't a man easily shaken. 6 years at the helm of Blackwell Industries had taught him how to stay composed, no matter the surprise. But now that composure was cracking. Sarah Monroe. Her name rang in his mind, dragging up memories he had tried hard to bury. Her bright smile during her internship at Blackwell, the evenings they spent beneath Seattle's soft lights, and then her sudden disappearance 6 years ago, without a single word. He'd told himself she had chosen to leave, but now her reappearance with 3 children made everything spin out of control. He sat down, his hand absently brushing across the touchscreen on his desk. A thought struck, sharp, undeniable. Those children might be mine. The idea made his heart race and sent a strange chill through him. He didn't know anything about them. He didn't know anything about Sarah's life over the past 6 years, but his instincts screamed that this was no coincidence. The ring of his phone snapped him back to reality. Lena, his assistant, spoke in her crisp, professional tone. Sir, I've looked into Sarah Monroe as you requested. She recently applied for the graphic design position at Spark Vibe, our newly acquired subsidiary. Her file lists her as 30 years old, recently relocated from Oregon, and Lena hesitated. She's the mother of 5-year-old triplets. Ethan's hand clenched, voice steady but tight. What are their names? Damien, Daniel, and Daisy Monroe, Lena answered. I can dig for more information, but it'll take some time. Do it, Ethan ordered, his tone cold but urgent. I want everything. Where she's living, her work history, her family situation, all of it. He ended the call and turned back to the window. 5 years old. Sarah had left 6 years ago. The timing matched too perfectly. Meanwhile, in a small apartment on the outskirts of Seattle, Sarah sat holding Daisy in her arms. The little girl still coughed softly, her face pale but her smile sweet. Damien and Daniel were on the floor, playing with the robot model Daniel had painstakingly assembled. "Mom," Damien asked suddenly, his curious eyes fixed on her. "Who was that man in the office? He looked at us really weird." Sarah froze, her hands tightening without realizing it. "He's just someone who works there," she replied, her voice unsteady. "You can't run off like that again. Do you hear me? You scared me." She leaned down and kissed Daisy's forehead, trying to hide the panic in her chest. Ethan Blackwell. She had thought she could forget him, but the moment she looked into those blue eyes, all the memories came flooding back like a tidal wave. His smile, his promises, and that cold, devastating message on Blackwell's internal app. "We're not right for each other. Don't contact me again." She had read it hundreds of times until her tears blurred the screen. 6 years ago, Sarah was a hopeful intern who believed love could conquer anything. But that message, paired with a tabloid article announcing Ethan's engagement to the daughter of a powerful family, had shattered everything. She had fled Seattle carrying a secret, the children she refused to raise in the shadow of a man who clearly didn't want them. And now he was just steps away again. The way he looked at Damien had terrified her. Did he recognize him? Was he suspicious? Sarah stood and poured a glass of water, trying to calm her racing thoughts. He doesn't know, she told herself, and he won't. She had built a life for her children, and she wouldn't let the past ruin it. If she got the job at Spark Vibe, she'd keep her distance, work hard, and make sure Ethan Blackwell never entered her children's world. But Ethan wasn't the kind of man to let go. Later that evening, under the bright lights of his office, he received an email from Lena. The attached file included Sarah's application, her temporary Seattle address, and a photo, taken at a park in Oregon, of her with the 3 children. Ethan zoomed in on the image, studying the faces of Damien, Daniel, and Daisy. His chest tightened. Not just Damien. Daniel had his thick eyebrows, and Daisy, though frail, wore a smile eerily similar to his mother Eleanor's in the old family photos. He remembered the moment Sarah had burst into his office, hair a mess, eyes wide with fear, but fierce in her protection of the children. She had changed. She was no longer the innocent girl he once knew. She was stronger now, but more distant too. "Sorry for the disturbance," she'd said, avoiding his eyes like looking at him physically hurt. Why did she leave 6 years ago? Why didn't she ever come back? And these children, who are they really? Ethan shut his laptop, stood, and stared out at the city swallowed in darkness. He didn't believe in coincidences. Sarah Monroe wasn't just a ghost from the past. She was the answer to questions he had never dared to ask. And he would find the truth, no matter how long it took. Sarah sat in the dimly lit apartment on the outskirts of Seattle, the soft glow of a desk lamp casting a warm hue on her face. Daisy was already asleep, her breathing gentle on the small bed, while Damien and Daniel whispered to each other about the robot model in the corner of the room. But Sarah's mind wasn't there. The unexpected encounter with Ethan Blackwell the day before, his stunned gaze when he looked at the children, had flung wide open the door to a past she had spent 6 years trying to seal shut. She closed her eyes and the memories came rushing back, clear as if it had happened only yesterday. Back in 2019, Sarah Monroe was 24, a dreamy and ambitious graphic design intern at Blackwell Industries. Seattle, with its rain-soaked streets and glittering skyline, felt like the perfect place to build a future. Blackwell Industries, a tech titan, was every graduate's dream workplace. But what truly made her heart race wasn't the innovative projects or sleek office spaces. It was Ethan Blackwell. At the time, Ethan was 29, not yet the cold CEO he had become. He was the head of product development, brilliant, sharp, but with a smile that seemed meant only for Sarah. They met during a team meeting when Sarah presented a UI design concept for a new app. "You have talent," Ethan said, his deep blue eyes locking with hers, and she felt her cheeks flush. From that moment, brief hallway chats turned into after-work coffees and then into weekend walks along Puget Sound, where Ethan shared dreams of making technology accessible to all, and Sarah talked about the sketches she'd drawn since she was a child. Their love blossomed quickly, intense yet discreet. Ethan, heir to the Blackwell empire, disliked attention. Sarah, a small-town girl, was unaccustomed to the glitz of high society. But when they were together, they were just Ethan and Sarah. No barriers, no expectations. One summer night, under the soft moonlight in Ethan's apartment, they crossed a line. Lying in his arms, Sarah felt as though the world had melted away. "I'll always be here, Sarah," Ethan had whispered, and she believed him. But weeks later, everything changed. Sarah discovered she was pregnant. Panic hit first, but underneath it was joy. The babies, she didn't yet know it was triplets, were a gift born of love. She decided to tell Ethan, even though she feared he might not be ready. She planned to meet him after work, rehearsing her words over and over in her head. But before she could speak to him, a notification popped up on her phone. From Blackwell Connect, the company's internal messaging app. It was from Ethan Blackwell's verified account, marked by the badge reserved for senior executives. The message was brief and clinical, the way he approved business reports. "Sarah, we're not right for each other. Don't contact me again." Sarah read it over and over, her heart stopping. The tone was unmistakably Ethan, blunt, decisive, like the way he handled meetings. But what shattered her was the finality. No explanation, no chance to speak. She tried calling, hands trembling, but the only number she had, his work line, returned a message. No longer in service. She messaged him through Blackwell Connect. "Ethan, I need to talk. Please." There was no reply. She even went to the office only to be told by security that Ethan was out of the country on business. Desperate, she left a handwritten note at the front desk. "Ethan, I need to see you. Sarah." She never knew that note was intercepted and quietly destroyed by Helen, the personal assistant of Eleanor Blackwell, Ethan's mother. Helen wasn't acting out of loyalty alone. Eleanor had promised her a promotion to upper management if she could take care of Sarah. To Eleanor, Sarah was a threat, a small-town intern with no pedigree, no prestige, utterly unfit for the future she envisioned for her son. Ethan was destined to inherit Blackwell Industries and marry into a powerful family to secure corporate alliances. "This girl will ruin everything," Eleanor had said behind closed doors. "Make sure she disappears, and Ethan must never find out." Sarah knew nothing of this scheme. All she knew was that her heart had shattered. 2 days after the message, an article spread online. Ethan Blackwell engaged to Sophia Langley, heiress of Langley Tech. A photo of Ethan smiling beside a glamorous blonde in a glittering evening gown struck like a final blow. Sitting alone in her apartment, tears streamed down Sarah's cheeks as her hand rested over her stomach. "It's just you and me now," she whispered, though she didn't yet know there were 3 lives growing inside her. She went back to Blackwell Industries one last time, praying to see Ethan, but security told her he wasn't scheduled to return. Standing beneath the relentless Seattle rain, Sarah felt invisible, small and helpless against the Blackwell empire. She decided to leave, not just because her heart was broken, but because she wanted to protect her children from a father who, it seemed, didn't want them. She moved to a small town in Oregon, took a job at a craft store, and raised Damien, Daniel, and Daisy with all the love she had. Every night, watching them sleep, she reminded herself she had made the right choice. But now, as the memories of Ethan came rushing back, she couldn't help but wonder, did I really know him at all? The Seattle rain had finally eased, leaving shimmering puddles on the streets. In Ethan Blackwell's expansive office, sunlight streamed through the tall windows, illuminating his desk, where a child's drawing lay neatly placed. The picture, sent through Blackwell Industries' internal mail system, was a single sheet of A4 paper, drawn with clumsy but heartfelt crayon strokes. In the center were 4 stick figures holding hands, a long-haired woman, 3 small children, and a tall man with carefully colored blue eyes. Beneath it, the scribbled handwriting of a 5-year-old read, "I think I know who my daddy is. For Mr. Ethan." Ethan stared at the drawing, his fingertip gently tracing the blue crayon. Damien, the curious, sensitive boy who had stumbled into his office 2 weeks ago, was now tugging at his heart in a way Ethan hadn't expected. He had reviewed the file Lena sent him over and over, Sarah's application, the photos of her children, and the timelines that aligned far too perfectly. Damien, Daniel, and Daisy, 5 years old, born just months after Sarah left Seattle. He didn't need a DNA test to suspect the truth, but he also couldn't act on impulse. U.S. law prohibited DNA testing of minors without legal parental consent, and Ethan, despite his influence, had no desire to cross ethical lines. More than anything, he wanted the truth to come from Sarah herself, not from some cold lab report. He picked up his phone and called Lena. "Schedule a meeting with Sarah Monroe. Just the two of us. No one else. Tell her it's regarding her work at Spark Vibe." He paused, knowing Sarah wouldn't agree easily. She'd kept her distance since that unexpected encounter, and he could feel the invisible wall she had built. But Damien's drawing was a plea, a door opening, and Ethan couldn't ignore it. Meanwhile, Sarah sat in the small office at Spark Vibe, her eyes focused on her computer screen. She had just been officially hired as a graphic designer, a huge step after years of odd jobs in Oregon. But her joy was clouded by what she had discovered the previous week. Spark Vibe was now a subsidiary of Blackwell Industries. Ethan Blackwell, the man she once loved and ran from, was now indirectly her boss. Every day she came to work, she worried she might run into him. Thankfully, he occupied the top floor while she worked in the design wing far below. The phone rang, pulling her from her thoughts. Mia, her manager, spoke in a calm voice. "Sarah, Mr. Blackwell would like to meet with you. Just a quick conversation about your position. This afternoon, would that work?" Sarah froze, her hand tightening around her pencil. She wanted to refuse, but that morning Damien had asked her, "Mom, will Mr. Ethan come back?" And that look in his eyes. She had to face Ethan if she wanted to protect her children. "Okay," Sarah replied stiffly, "but I have conditions. No press. No one else is to know about this meeting." Mia agreed, and Sarah's stomach nodded. She had no idea Damien had sent the drawing, no idea her son's innocent gesture had pulled her into a conversation she wasn't ready to have. That afternoon, Sarah stepped into Ethan's office, her heart pounding. The room looked just as it had 2 weeks ago. An ebony desk, windows overlooking Seattle, and an atmosphere steeped in authority. Ethan rose to his feet, his tailored gray suit perfectly in place, his piercing blue eyes fixed on her with a mix of curiosity and restraint. "Thank you for coming, Sarah," he said, his voice low. He gestured to the seat across from his desk, but Sarah remained standing, her hand clutching her bag strap tightly. "I'm here about work," she said flatly. "If this isn't important, I'll be leaving." She avoided his gaze, terrified that one look would unravel her. Ethan didn't respond right away. Instead, he picked up the drawing and placed it on the desk, turning it toward her. "This was sent to me," he said, voice calm but pointed. "Damien. He wrote that he thinks he knows who his father is." Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. She rushed forward, snatching the paper, panic in her eyes. "Damien doesn't know what he's doing," she said, her voice trembling. "He's just a curious child. Don't read too much into it." She shoved the drawing into her bag as if hiding it could erase Ethan's suspicions. "Sarah," Ethan said, stepping closer. His tone softened, but his resolve didn't waver. "I'm not trying to cause trouble, but I need to know the truth. These children, they might be mine, right?" He paused, locking eyes with her, waiting. Sarah turned away, taking a deep breath. She wanted to scream, to run, but she knew she couldn't. Her children were everything, and she would face anything to protect them. "If you want to talk about my kids," she said coldly, "there's nothing to discuss. They're mine. Only mine." Ethan's jaw clenched, but he forced himself to remain calm. He had considered pushing for a DNA test, but the law and his conscience held him back. He didn't want to pressure Sarah. He wanted her to choose to tell him, even if it took time. "Fine," he said finally. "I respect that, but at least let me help. The children, they must need support, medical care, school, anything. I can provide financial assistance." Sarah laughed, bitter and sharp. "Financial assistance?" she scoffed, eyes flashing. "You think money fixes everything? I've raised them for 6 years without anyone's help. I don't need yours, Ethan." She turned to leave, but he called out, "Sarah, I'm not trying to fight. I just want to do what's right. If they are." He couldn't finish the sentence. "If they're connected to me, I want to take responsibility." Sarah stopped, her hand on the door handle. She turned back, pain etched into her features. Responsibility? 6 years ago, you chose to walk away. Don't talk to me about responsibility now. She opened the door and walked out, leaving Ethan reeling. He stared at the desk, at the copy of Damien's drawing he had kept before giving Sarah the original. Her final words echoed in his mind. You chose to walk away, but he hadn't. Sarah had vanished without a trace. So why was she speaking as if he had betrayed her? Ethan sat down, rubbing his temples. Something wasn't right, and he was going to find out what it was. Back in her apartment, Sarah held Damien in her arms, the crumpled drawing resting on the table. You can't send anything to Mr. Ethan again, okay? She said gently but firmly. Damien nodded, his eyes full of regret. I just wanted him to like us, he whispered. Sarah kissed his forehead, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. She didn't know how to protect her children from the past, but she knew one thing. She wouldn't let Ethan take them away. Even if deep down, her heart still trembled at the sound of his voice. March in Seattle brought cold winds, but rare sunlight broke through the clouds, casting a golden glow on the small park near Blackwell Industries. Ethan Blackwell stood by a wooden bench, holding a paper bag of chocolate chip cookies, his gaze following 3 children playing on the grass. Damien, with his messy brown hair, was chasing a soccer ball, laughing out loud. Daniel, quieter, sat on a bench nearby, carefully assembling a plastic robot model. And Daisy, the frailest of the 3, with pale blonde hair, sat next to Ethan, her tiny hands clutching a cloth doll, coughing softly in the breeze. It had been 2 weeks since the tense conversation in Ethan's office. Sarah, though reluctant, had agreed to let Ethan see the children, under strict conditions. He was to be introduced only as Mr. Ethan, a family friend from work, and all interactions had to be supervised. I'm doing this for them, not for you, she'd said, her voice cold but trembling. Ethan had nodded, accepting her boundaries. He understood now. Fatherhood wasn't a birthright. It had to be built, slowly, with patience and sincerity. Today marked his 3rd visit with the children. He had chosen the park instead of the office to help them feel more comfortable. Damien was the first to break the ice, pulling Ethan into a game of soccer. Mr. Ethan, you kick harder than Mom, Damien shouted, making Ethan laugh, his first genuine laugh in weeks. Daniel, though quiet, had started asking Ethan about technology, his eyes lighting up as Ethan explained how the touchscreen in his office worked. But it was Daisy, the most delicate of the 3, who stirred something deeper in Ethan. Are you cold, Daisy? Ethan asked gently, removing his tailored jacket and draping it over her shoulders. Daisy shook her head, but her faint smile worried him. Sarah had mentioned that Daisy was born prematurely and had always been weaker than her brothers. Every soft cough from her was a reminder of the responsibility he might have failed. Want me to tell you a story? Ethan asked, sitting beside her. Daisy nodded, her eyes bright. He improvised a tale about a little robot searching for his family, and Daisy giggled softly, leaning closer to him. In that moment, Ethan's heart warmed and ached. If they're mine, I've left them alone for far too long. A few feet away, Sarah pretended to scroll through work documents on her phone, but her eyes never strayed far from Ethan and the children. She had recently transferred to Blackwell Industries' main office, a move she initially resisted. But Mia, her manager, had convinced her it was a chance to work on larger projects. Sarah poured herself into her work, designing interfaces for a new app, and was surprised by how smoothly everything had gone. Her computer never lagged, approvals came quickly, and she'd even been assigned a part-time assistant. She didn't know Ethan had quietly ordered the IT team to ensure she had every tool she needed. He never interfered directly. He didn't want her to feel watched or controlled. He just wanted her to have time, for the kids and for herself. Watching Ethan with the children, Sarah's heart twisted. She hated how quickly the kids had taken to him. Damien no longer asked about Mr. Ethan with curiosity, but with excitement. Daniel, once reserved, now brought his robot creations to show off. And Daisy, her shy, cautious Daisy, had even given Ethan a paper flower, whispering, "For you, because you tell good stories." Sarah wanted to be angry at Ethan, to keep her wall up, But every small gesture, his patience with the children, the way he honored her boundaries, chipped away at her resolve. Sarah, Ethan called gently as the children ran off to collect leaves. He approached slowly, keeping enough distance not to make her feel cornered. Thank you for letting me be here. I know this isn't easy for you. He used you in the way he used to 6 years ago, and it made her heart skip before she caught herself. Don't misunderstand, she said quickly, voice rigid. I'm doing this for them. They need good people around, not for any other reason. She turned away, but Ethan didn't retreat. I understand, he said, his voice calm. But if there's anything the kids need, doctors, school support, or even just a fun day, please let me know. I won't force anything. I just want to be there. He looked at her not as a powerful CEO, but as a man learning how to care. Sarah didn't reply, only gave a small nod. She called the kids back, ending the visit earlier than planned. On the way home, Daisy held her mother's hand and whispered, Mr. Ethan's nice, isn't he, Mommy? Sarah gave a faint smile, brushing Daisy's hair. He's trying, sweetheart. But inside, she couldn't deny what Ethan was doing, something she never believed he could 6 years ago, becoming part of their lives. That night, in their small apartment, Sarah sat at the kitchen table, staring at a photo taken in Oregon. Damien, Daniel, and Daisy grinning under the sun. She'd once believed she could be both mother and father all by herself. But the way Ethan looked at Daisy today, when he wrapped his coat around her, made her wonder, am I denying them something they deserve? She shook her head, forcing the thought away. Ethan might be kind now, but 6 years ago, he chose to leave. She couldn't let herself trust him again. In his office, Ethan placed Daisy's paper flower next to Damien's drawing. He didn't know how to tear down Sarah's wall, but he knew he couldn't walk away. Fatherhood, he realized, wasn't about blood. It was in the little moments, a story, a smile, a day at the park. And he would fight for every single one, whether or not Sarah let him in. April 2025. The air in Seattle was thick with moisture from the morning rain. Sarah stood in her small office at Blackwell Industries, eyes skimming the design on her screen, though her mind was elsewhere. 3 months had passed since she'd come face to face with Ethan again, and everything had changed, for her and for the children. Damien, Daniel, and Daisy had grown increasingly attached to Mr. Ethan, and no matter how much Sarah tried to keep her distance, she couldn't deny one thing. Ethan was trying, truly trying, to become a part of their lives. But every time Daisy beamed while recounting something Ethan had done, every question Damien asked about him, Sarah felt her fear deepen. She was afraid the past would repeat itself, that Ethan, or his family, would tear apart the fragile world she had built. That afternoon, as Sarah prepared to leave work and pick up the kids from daycare, a woman entered her office without knocking. She wore a deep sapphire silk dress, her silver hair neatly pinned back, and her eyes sharp enough to cut glass. Sarah stiffened immediately. She recognized her at once. Eleanor Blackwell, Ethan's mother, the formidable matriarch behind the Blackwell Empire. They had never met, but 6 years ago, Sarah had heard the whispers. Eleanor was powerful, uncompromising. Ms. Monroe, Eleanor said slowly, her voice low and deliberate, as if delivering a sentence. She sat down across from Sarah without being invited, her gloved hands folded gracefully on the desk. Sarah clenched her fists, keeping her voice steady. Mrs. Blackwell, if this is about my work, I can arrange a meeting with my manager. Don't pretend, Eleanor interrupted sharply, her piercing gaze unwavering. You know why I'm here? The children and Ethan. She tilted her head slightly, as if appraising Sarah. You don't belong in this world, Miss Monroe. I respect that you're a mother, but you don't understand the pressures of a family like ours. Reputation, responsibility. Ethan needs someone who fits that mold, not a girl from a small town with 3 children. Her words sliced like a knife, resurrecting the pain from 6 years ago. Sarah rose to her feet, voice trembling but firm. You don't get to talk about my children. They are everything to me, and I don't need your approval or anyone else's. Eleanor offered a faint, dismissive smile. You misunderstand. I didn't come to argue. I came to offer a solution. Leave Seattle. I'll provide enough money for you and your children to live comfortably. But you must go and never come back. She pulled a check from her purse and slid it across the desk. The number written on it could have bought a house in nearly any city. Sarah stared at the check, then at Eleanor. Her blood boiled. You think I'd sell my children for money? She tore the check into pieces and let them fall to the floor like snowflakes. You can buy all of Seattle, Mrs. Blackwell, but not me. I will protect my children, even if it means standing against you or anyone else. Eleanor stood, her expression faltering for the first time before hardening again. You'll regret this, she said, and walked out, leaving Sarah breathless. When the door clicked shut, Sarah collapsed into her chair, tears slipping down her cheeks. The message from 6 years ago, the article about Ethan's engagement, and now this warning. It all came crashing back like a storm. She couldn't let her children grow up under the shadow of the Blackwell family. She had to leave, again. That night, Sarah began packing. In the small apartment, she folded the clothes of Damien, Daniel, and Daisy into suitcases, trying to hide her tears from them. We're going somewhere new, she told them when Damien asked, forcing a cheerful tone. There'll be prettier parks. But deep down, she knew. She wasn't just fleeing Eleanor. She was running from Ethan too, from the feelings he stirred inside her. Elsewhere, Ethan sat in his office, watching a security video Lena had forwarded him. He'd ordered surveillance after hearing Eleanor had visited Spark Vibe. The footage showed his mother entering Sarah's office and leaving with that same cold smile. His jaw clenched. Without a second thought, he drove to the Blackwell estate, where Eleanor sat in the parlor sipping tea, the chandelier light reflecting off her polished features. Mother, Ethan said, voice icy, restrained fury beneath every word. What did you say to Sarah? Eleanor calmly set down her teacup, unaffected. I did what was best for you, Ethan. That woman and those children will hold you back. You need someone like Sophia Langley, not a single mother with no status. Ethan stepped closer, fists clenched, his eyes blazing. You always have to control everything, don't you? 6 years ago, I thought Sarah left me. But now, I'm not so sure. She said I abandoned her. But that's not what happened. Did you do something? Did you drive her away, just like you're doing now? He waited, hoping for denial, but Eleanor remained silent. I don't need an answer now, Ethan said, voice quieter but unyielding. But hear me clearly. If you ever interfere with Sarah or my children again, I will resign from the family board. Blackwell Industries can go on without me, but I will not let you destroy my family again. Eleanor paled. It was the first time in years she had seen Ethan like this, not as her obedient son, but as a man ready to walk away from it all. You don't understand, she said, voice trembling. I'm trying to protect you. Protect me? Ethan gave a bitter laugh. If those kids are mine, you stole 6 years from them. Don't make me choose, Mother, because you won't like my choice. He turned and walked away, leaving her gripping her teacup with white knuckles. Word of the confrontation reached Sarah quickly. Lena, who had witnessed part of the exchange through the glass doors, relayed the story to Mia. And Mia, out of kindness, told Sarah the next morning. Ethan defended you and the kids, Mia said gently. I've never seen him like that. Sarah didn't reply, but Mia's words echoed in her mind all day. That afternoon, she took the children to the park, where Ethan was waiting as usual. He sat on a bench, reading to Daisy, while Damien and Daniel played soccer nearby. As Sarah approached, Ethan stood, his eyes filled with worry. Sarah, I heard my mother came to see you. I'm sorry. I've made it clear she's not to interfere again. Sarah looked at him, and for the first time, she didn't see a powerful CEO or the man who had once broken her heart. She saw a father learning to love, a man who had stood up to his family for the sake of their children. Why? She asked softly. Why are you fighting for us? Ethan gave a sad smile, his eyes drifting to Daisy's laughter. Because I want to be the man they deserve. And because of you, Sarah. I don't know what really happened 6 years ago, but I want to make it right, even if you never give me the chance. Sarah turned away, silent tears trailing down her face. She didn't answer. But for the first time, she didn't call the children back early. She let Ethan keep reading to Daisy, let Damien drag him into their game, let Daniel proudly show off his robot. And in that golden Seattle sunset, she felt, perhaps, just perhaps, she didn't have to run anymore. Are you still following the story? Please leave your thoughts on the story in the comments below. All your comments are the motivation for us to create better stories. Don't forget to subscribe to Soul Stories. Thank you very much. May 2025. The spring rains in Seattle had finally given way to summer sunlight, casting warm reflections off the glass towers downtown. Inside his office at Blackwell Industries, Ethan Blackwell sat still before his computer screen, his fingers clenched around a stack of documents. In front of him was a printed record from Blackwell Connect, the company's internal messaging app. A single knife-edged line of text stood out in bold. "Sarah, we're not right for each other. Don't contact me again." The message had been sent from his account 6 years ago, but Ethan knew. He didn't write it. The truth had come to light earlier that morning, unraveling everything he thought he knew. It all started with an internal investigation. Helen Carter, Eleanor Blackwell's former secretary, had been arrested for embezzling over $1 million from the company's development fund. During questioning, investigators uncovered that Helen had used her high-level access to Blackwell Connect for more than financial fraud. Hidden in the logs was something far more personal. In August 2019, Helen had sent a message to Sarah Monroe from Ethan's account, mimicking his tone to perfection. Alongside that, the logs showed she had blocked every attempt Sarah made to reach Ethan afterward, including one desperate message. "Ethan, I need to talk. Please." It was Lena, Ethan's assistant, who first brought the discovery to his desk. "Mr. Blackwell," she said, her voice trembling as she handed him the file, "we found this in Helen's activity logs. It looks like Mrs. Eleanor ordered her to do it." Ethan read every line, his face draining of color. His mother hadn't just threatened Sarah a few weeks ago. She had orchestrated the very misunderstanding that tore them apart 6 years ago. The fake message. The article announcing his engagement to Sophia Langley. It had all been part of a carefully laid plan to erase Sarah from his life. Ethan thought of Sarah's pained words in his office. "You chose to leave me." He had suspected his mother's interference, but he had never imagined it was this cruel. Grabbing the file, he headed straight for Sarah's apartment. She had to know the truth, no matter how much it hurt, no matter how little it could change the past. Inside the small apartment, Sarah was gently tying Daisy's hair into pigtails, while Damien and Daniel played with building blocks on the floor. She tried to remain calm, but her thoughts still circled around last week's moment in the park. Ethan confronting his mother to defend her and the kids, the sincerity in his eyes when he said, "I want to make this right." She wanted to believe him, but fear still lingered, that trusting him again would only lead to heartbreak. A knock at the door startled her. She opened it to find Ethan standing there, his gray suit wrinkled, eyes shadowed with pain and resolve. "Sarah," he said hoarsely, "we need to talk. Just 5 minutes, please." She hesitated, glancing at the kids playing nearby, then nodded. She led him to the kitchen, where they could speak in private. "What is it?" she asked, her arms crossed like a shield. Ethan placed the file on the table and opened it to the page containing the fake message. "6 years ago, you got this from me," he said, pushing the paper toward her, "telling you we weren't right for each other, that you shouldn't contact me again. I didn't send that, Sarah. Helen, my mother's secretary, did. She was ordered to, by my mother." Sarah stared at the page, her heart pounding. That message, the one that shattered her, now lay before her, accompanied by proof that it was a lie. She flipped to the next page and saw her own message. "Ethan, I need to talk, please." She remembered sending it, remembered how her heart broke when she never heard back. She blocked my messages," she whispered, voice shaking. Ethan nodded, his eyes filled with remorse. I didn't know you tried to reach me, that you came to the office, that you left a note. Helen blocked it all, and my mother," he stopped, rubbing his face. "She thought she was protecting me, but she destroyed everything. I searched for you for weeks, Sarah, called around, asked coworkers, but there was nothing. I thought I thought you chose to leave. Sarah turned away, tears rolling silently down her cheeks. She remembered those lonely days in her rented apartment, pregnant with triplets, believing Ethan had chosen a different life. I was pregnant, Ethan, she choked. I was going to tell you, but then the message and the article about Sophia Langley. I thought you didn't want us. Ethan took a step forward, then stopped as she stepped back. I didn't know about the article, he said, voice cracking. That was my mother's doing too, trying to solidify a merger with Langley Tech. I was never engaged, not even close. He exhaled slowly, grief washing over his face. I don't deserve to be their father, Sarah. I wasn't there, but I didn't know. And now that I do, I want to be a better man. For them. For you. I want to make it right, even if I can only fix a fraction of what I've broken. Sarah looked at him, her eyes full of pain, and something else. Hope. She touched the printed message, the one that had haunted her every night for 6 years. It was a lie. All of it. She wanted to hate Ethan, to rage against his mother, to scream at the unfairness of it all. But she was tired. Tired of being angry. Tired of holding on to pain. More than anything, she wanted her children to be happy, and deep down she knew Ethan wanted that too. They don't know, she said at last, voice soft. They don't know you're their father, and I don't know how to tell them. She glanced toward the living room, where Daisy was giggling at something Damien had built. But if you want to be in their lives, Ethan, you have to earn it, not with words, with time. Ethan nodded, eyes glinting with determination. I will, no matter how long it takes. He didn't reach for her, didn't try to force anything. He simply stood there, waiting. Sarah wiped her tears and took a deep breath. Okay, she said, but this isn't forgiveness. This is a chance, for the kids. She turned to look at them, and Ethan followed her gaze. His heart felt heavier than ever, but also lighter, freed by truth at last. The past couldn't be changed, but it could be the foundation for a new beginning. The truth had surfaced, and though it hurt, it was also the first step toward healing. Late May 2025. The first glow of summer was fading in Seattle, giving way to soft lavender skies as twilight settled over the city. Inside Sarah Monroe's modest apartment, the air felt heavy despite the sounds of laughter echoing from the living room. Damien, Daniel, and Daisy sat on the rug-building towers with blocks, but Sarah noticed Damien, her most sensitive child, glancing at her when he thought she wasn't looking. Since her conversation with Ethan the week before, when the truth about the forged message was revealed, Sarah had tried to keep life normal, but the turmoil inside her was impossible to mask. She was caught between the pain of the past and the quiet hope Ethan had brought back into her life. And Damien, with the tender perception of a 5-year-old, sensed every ripple of that emotional current. Mommy, are you sad? Damien asked quietly while Sarah was washing dishes in the kitchen. She turned, forcing a small smile as she dried her hands on a dish towel. No, sweetheart. Mommy's just a little tired. But Damien wasn't convinced. He had seen her wiping away tears when she thought no one was looking. He had heard her sigh while staring at their family photo. And he remembered how Mr. Ethan had looked at her in the park, how she had gone silent after whatever he said. Damien didn't understand everything, but he knew Mr. Ethan mattered, and he wanted his mom to smile like she used to. That afternoon, when Sarah took the children to the neighborhood park, Damien quietly slipped away while she was helping Daisy retie her shoelaces. She didn't notice right away. Damien, tiny legs fueled by big determination, hurried toward the tall building he remembered. Blackwell Industries, just a few blocks away. He knew the path. He remembered the office where he had met Mr. Ethan. If I find him, maybe Mommy won't be sad anymore, he whispered, clutching the cloth doll Daisy had handed him. For safety. But Seattle wasn't kind to a 5-year-old alone. As he crossed a busy street, Damien tripped over the curb and fell hard onto the sidewalk. He tried to stand, but a sharp pain shot through his ankle. Tears welled up, and he began to cry. A middle-aged woman nearby rushed to his side, alarmed. She called the police while Damien sobbed, still holding the doll. I need to find Mr. Ethan, he sniffled. Hearing the name and recognizing Blackwell Industries, the woman contacted the building. Word reached Ethan within minutes. He was in his office reviewing a report when Lena burst in, breathless. "Mr. Blackwell, Damien, he's been found on the street. He fell. The police are taking him to Seattle General Hospital." Ethan's heart stopped. He didn't think. He grabbed his coat and sprinted for his car, mind racing. "Damien, my son. Why would he go looking for me?" He called Sarah. No answer. She was probably already searching for him. At Seattle General, Ethan arrived just as Damien was being wheeled into the ER. The boy lay on the gurney, pale and teary-eyed, still clinging to the cloth doll. A calm-voiced doctor told Ethan that Damien had a dislocated ankle. Painful but not serious. He would need a cast and some rest. Ethan knelt by the bed, grasping the small hand in his. "Damien, it's me. I'm here. You're going to be okay." Damien blinked at him, his blue eyes so much like Ethan's glistening. "I wanted to find you, so Mommy wouldn't be sad," he whispered, before drifting into sleep from exhaustion and pain meds. Ethan's chest tightened. He sat there motionless, hands still clasped with his son's. He thought of Sarah, of how terrified she must be, of the 6 years he'd failed to be there for his children. If this is what being a father means, then I've failed them again and again. Sarah arrived at the hospital an hour later, out of breath, her hair wine-tossed from panic. She had been frantic after realizing Damien was gone, searching the park, calling the police, finally getting a call from the hospital. She'd left Daniel and Daisy with a friend and raced to the ER. When she burst through the doors, she found Ethan seated beside Damien's hospital bed, his hand still holding the boys. Damien lay asleep, his left leg in a fresh white cast, the cloth doll tucked beside him. "Sarah," Ethan said as he rose, his voice raw. "I didn't know he was coming to find me. She didn't let him finish. She rushed to the bed, wrapped her arms around Damien, and kissed his forehead through her tears. "My baby," she whispered. Then she turned to Ethan, her expression a mix of fury and relief. "You were here all night?" she asked, voice trembling. Ethan nodded. "I couldn't leave. He said he wanted to find me so you wouldn't be sad." He paused, emotion tightening his throat. "Sarah, I don't know how to fix everything I've broken, but I won't let them be hurt anymore." Sarah looked at him, and for the first time, she saw more than guilt. She saw a father. She thought of the truth he had brought to her last week, the forged message, the apology that came not with excuses, but with humility. She remembered the way he told stories to Daisy, played soccer with Daniel, and now had stayed beside Damien through the night. She drew a slow breath, voice quiet but steady. "Ethan, you're their father. I can't deny that anymore." The words struck like a blade, cutting but also freeing. Ethan blinked, his tears finally falling. He didn't speak, afraid to ruin the fragile moment. Sarah took the seat beside the bed. Ethan sat next to her. They didn't speak of love. They didn't make promises. They simply sat side by side, watching over their sleeping son. Then, without thinking, Sarah reached out, and Ethan took her hand. His was warm, trembling slightly in hers. In the stillness of that hospital room, under soft fluorescent lights, they found something unspoken. Not the love they once had, but the love they now shared for their children, and perhaps the beginning of something new. June 2025. The gentle summer sun filtered through the trees in a quiet backyard on the outskirts of Seattle. Sarah Monroe stood by a wooden picnic table, arranging cookies and fruit juice, her gaze drifting toward her 3 children laughing and running on the grass. Damien, his ankle now fully healed, was trying to teach Daniel how to fly a kite, while Daisy sat on a blanket, rocking her cloth doll gently in her lap. Beside her, Ethan Blackwell, dressed not in his usual powerful suit, but in a simple t-shirt and jeans, was tending to a small campfire, preparing marshmallows for roasting. Today marked their first family picnic, a fragile, hopeful step forward after months of turbulence. Just last week, Ethan and Sarah had walked into a law office together to finalize the adoption paperwork. With Sarah's full consent, Ethan had legally become the father of Damien, Daniel, and Daisy. The process was straightforward, but when Sarah signed her name, a wave of relief and fear washed over her. "This is for the children," she'd said, her voice steady but her eyes cautious. Ethan had only nodded, his expression resolute. He knew legal parenthood was more than ink and paper. It was a vow to be there every single day, despite the wreckage of the past. Now, under the lavender hues of a Seattle sunset, Sarah watched as Ethan gently showed Daisy how to skewer a marshmallow on a bamboo stick. His voice was soft, patient. "Easy now, sweetheart. Don't let it fall." Daisy giggled, her cheeks glowing pink. Sarah sank onto the blanket, hugging a pillow to her chest. Her heart felt warm, entangled. She had opened her heart, admitted Ethan was the children's father. But the fear of being hurt again lingered like a shadow. Ethan caught her gaze and walked over, sitting beside her, keeping just enough space to let her breathe. "You okay?" he asked quietly. Sarah nodded but then sighed, her eyes following the children. "I was just thinking about everything," she murmured. 6 years, Ethan. I raised them alone, in a tiny town, working at a craft store just to afford formula, diapers, and Daisy's medicine when she got sick. There were nights I didn't sleep. When Damien had a fever or Daniel cried for a toy I couldn't afford, I did everything I could to make them smile. But sometimes I wondered if I was enough. Ethan listened in silence, his grip tightening on the bamboo stick in his hand. He wanted to say something, anything, but he knew this wasn't a moment for defense. It was a moment to listen, to understand. Sarah's voice softened. "I used to think you abandoned us. That belief made me strong, but it also made me afraid. Afraid to trust again, afraid to let anyone close." Ethan looked at her, his eyes gentle. "Sarah, I can't change the past. I can't erase the nights you spent alone or the fear you carried. But I'm here now, and I'll do everything I can to make sure you and the kids never have to carry that fear again." Sarah turned to him, her gaze flickering with emotion. "You're not the man I loved back then," she said, her tone honest, not cruel. "You've changed, Ethan. You're no longer that dreamer in a polished office. And I'm not that naive girl who believed love fixed everything." Ethan offered a bittersweet smile, the fading sunlight casting gold on his features. "You're the reason I want to be a better man, Sarah. Not just for the kids, but for you. You gave me a family, a second chance. I can't promise to be perfect, but I promise I won't leave." His words drifted over her like a warm breeze, stirring something deep within. She didn't respond right away. Instead, she leaned gently against his shoulder, a simple gesture, but one that said everything. Ethan didn't move, afraid to shatter the moment. They sat there in silence, shoulder to shoulder, watching their children roast marshmallows. Damien's laughter rang through the yard. Daniel waved his half-burnt marshmallow like a trophy, and Daisy cradled her doll beside the fire. In that quiet embrace beneath the soft sky, Sarah felt something she hadn't known in years. She wasn't alone anymore. Seattle, July 2025. The city basked in golden sunshine, birds chirping softly in the trees. In the backyard of Sarah Monroe's apartment, a simple birthday party was in full swing for Damien, Daniel, and Daisy, now officially 6 years old. A wooden table draped in a sky blue cloth held a chocolate cake. Colorful balloons were tied to the chairs, and a handmade paper garland fluttered gently in the breeze. Ethan stood at the grill, flipping burgers, while Sarah sliced fruit nearby, her gaze drifting lovingly over the children as they ran through the grass with a few of their friends from daycare. It wasn't extravagant, but it overflowed with love. And that, above all, was what Sarah and Ethan wanted their children to feel. Ethan had spent weeks planning not just the party, but something far more important. Since their picnic a month earlier, he had felt a shift in Sarah. The wall between them was no longer stone. It was a door, slightly ajar. She was still guarded, still afraid of the past. But he also knew something else. He couldn't imagine his life without her, or without the kids. Today he was going to risk everything. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting the sky in soft shades of lavender and gold, the party reached its final moment. Gift giving. Ethan knelt before the children, presenting each with a small, silver-wrapped box. "These are special gifts," he said, voice deep and warm. Damien opened his first. His eyes widened with joy when he found a small silver ring inside, finely engraved with the letter D. Daniel and Daisy followed, each finding their own tiny ring, their initials delicately carved into the silver bands. "This is a promise from your dad," Ethan said, his voice catching slightly as he looked at them. "I'll always be here, no matter what." The children squealed with delight, slipping the rings onto their tiny fingers and running off to show Sarah. She smiled at their excitement, but as she approached Ethan by the cake table, her gaze held quiet curiosity. "Why rings?" she asked softly. Ethan drew a slow breath and reached into his pocket. "I'm glad you asked." He pulled out a fourth box, this one smaller, velvet, unmistakably different. Then before she could respond, he dropped to one knee. Gasps and tiny cheers rippled through the children as Sarah's eyes widened in surprise. Ethan opened the box to reveal a fourth silver ring, simple, elegant, and glowing softly in the twilight. "Sarah," he began, voice shaking slightly but full of resolve, "I left you alone for far too long. 6 years. I wasn't there when you needed me most. I wasn't there for our kids. But now I know you're everything. Not just the mother of my children, but the person I want beside me every day. If you'll give me the chance, not just to be a father, but to be your husband, I promise I'll spend the rest of my life making you and the kids happy." Sarah stood frozen, tears slipping silently down her cheeks, one hand over her mouth. She looked at Ethan, then at the children, watching them with wide, hopeful eyes. She remembered the years of loneliness, the pain, the silence, but she also remembered the past few months. Ethan reading to Daisy, playing soccer with Damien, teaching Daniel about circuits and screens, and sitting all night in a hospital room just to hold their son's hand. He wasn't perfect, but he had changed, and so had she. She reached out her hand, her voice breaking. "Yes, Ethan, I say yes." Cheers erupted from the children and a few neighbors. Ethan stood and slid the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms. Sarah leaned against his chest, her tears soaking into his shirt, but her smile shone brighter than it had in years. The party ended with the whole family gathered around the birthday cake. Damien, Daniel, and Daisy blew out the candles in unison, their laughter echoing in the warm air. Sarah sat beside Ethan, her fingers laced with his, the silver ring gleaming under the twilight. They looked at the children, then at each other. And in that moment, they both knew this was home, a real family built not from perfection, but from pain that had healed, love that had endured, and a second chance they had both chosen to take.